She said the wedding would start at 4 p.m. on my front lawn. I was standing in my driveway when I saw white chairs being unloaded from a truck, big flower arches, a long red carpet rolling across my grass, workers moving fast like they own the place. One guy even told me, "Sir, please move your car. The bride will arrive soon." I blinked. The bride? Before he could answer, she walked up. HOA President Linda Harper. Perfect smile, clipboard in hand, acting like she ran the whole county. "You finally decided to show up," she said, looking at my house like it belonged to her. "We left notices." "What notices?" She held up a paper. "Community event approval. The HOA board voted. Your property has the best lake view. It's for the neighborhood's benefit." I stared at the paper. It had my address on it, but the signature wasn't mine. "You scheduled a wedding at my house," I said slowly, "without asking me? It's just for one evening. Don't be dramatic." Behind her, I saw strangers walking across my porch. Someone plugged speakers into my outdoor outlet. A catering truck backed into my driveway. My driveway. I felt my chest tighten, but I stayed calm. "You need to stop this," I told her. She stepped closer. "Or what? You'll complain? The HOA owns shared aesthetic rights. Read your agreement. I bought this property 3 years ago. Cash. No mortgage, no shared land, no HOA dues. The previous owner made that very clear. I'm not part of your HOA," I said. She tilted her head. "Everyone here is." That's when I noticed something else. A small lockbox on my gate. New. Not mine. "You changed my gate lock?" I asked. "For event security," she replied casually. "We can't have random people walking in." Random people? This is my house. If you try to ruin this wedding, I'll call the police and say you're harassing guests. Guests. On my land. Across the street, neighbors were watching. Some looked confused. Some were filming. Then a black SUV pulled up. The bride stepped out smiling, taking pictures in front of my porch like it was a venue she rented. Linda leaned in and whispered, "You should be proud. Your home is finally useful." That was the moment I saw it. Parked 2 houses down, a yellow machine sitting on a trailer. I had already scheduled demolition work for Monday morning. Legal permit, county approved, because I was tearing down this old house to build a new one for my daughter. Linda didn't know that. And the demolition crew, they were early. I looked at her and said quietly, "You might want to move those chairs." She smirked. "You wouldn't dare." 3:12 p.m. The demolition foreman just texted, "We're outside. Ready when you are." I smiled for the first time that day. "They're not your guests," I said, "and this is not your land." Her smile faded just a little. And that's when the first siren sounded in the distance. The siren got louder, and Linda's smile came back. "You hear that?" she said proudly. "I told you. I don't play games." 2 police cars turned onto the street. Guests started whispering. The bride looked confused, holding her flowers tighter. Music stopped mid-song. An officer stepped out, calm, watching everything. Linda walked straight to him before I could move. "Officer, this man is threatening to destroy a permitted community wedding. He's unstable. We need him removed." Removed from my own land. The officer looked at me. "Sir, is this your property?" "Yes," I said. "Freehold. No HOA." Linda jumped in fast. "He's behind on dues. We have authority here." I almost laughed. I had never paid them a single dollar. The officer turned back to her. "Ma'am, do you have proof this event was approved by the property owner?" She handed him the same paper, fake signature and all. He studied it for a few seconds, then looked at me. "Do you recognize this signature?" "No," I said, "but I recognize forgery." Guests gasped. The bride's father walked closer. "What's going on?" Before Linda could answer, the ground shook slightly. Everyone turned. The demolition truck was slowly rolling forward on the street. Big yellow machine, engine rumbling, the company name printed clearly on the side. Linda's face changed. "What is that?" she asked. "My contractor," I replied calmly. "We start demolition today." "You can't," she snapped. "There's a wedding. I didn't schedule one." The foreman stepped out of his truck and waved at me. "You want us to wait?" The officer looked confused. "Demolition today?" I nodded and pulled out my permit from the county office. Official stamp. Today's date. Approved 2 weeks ago. Linda grabbed the paper from my hand. "This is ridiculous. You're trying to intimidate everyone." The officer gently took it back from her. "Ma'am, this permit is valid." Music speakers were now completely off. Half the guests were stepping away from the chairs. The bride looked like she was about to cry. Linda lowered her voice and hissed at me. "If you do this, I'll sue you for emotional damage." I leaned closer. "You scheduled a wedding on property you don't own." She suddenly pulled out her phone. "Fine, I'll call the county inspector. This house isn't even safe." It should have been condemned. That caught my attention. "How would you know that?" I asked. She froze for half a second, then smiled again. "Because I filed a complaint last month." I stared at her. "Last month?" That's when something clicked in my head. The random safety inspection notice I received, the strange code violation warning, the anonymous complaint about structural risk. It wasn't random. It was her. The officer looked between us. "Ma'am, did you file a report against this property?" Linda crossed her arms. "I did what was necessary for the community." The demolition foreman checked his watch. "We're on the clock. You want us to begin?" I looked at the half-built wedding setup. The guests who had no idea they were standing in the middle of something illegal. Then I said something that made Linda's face lose all color. "Start with the front porch." The engine roared louder. The bride screamed, "Dad, what is happening?" Guests started grabbing chairs, heels sinking into my grass as they rushed away from the porch. The demolition crew didn't rush. They moved slow, professional, like they had done this 100 times. Linda ran toward the machine, waving her arms. "Stop! This is reckless. There are people here." The foreman didn't even look at her. He looked at me. I nodded once. The metal claw lifted, then paused just inches from my porch railing. The officer stepped between us. "Hold on. Nobody's tearing anything down until I understand this." "Fair enough." He turned to Linda. "Ma'am, did you sign a rental agreement with this property owner?" "The HOA board approved it." "That's not what I asked." She swallowed. "The community has rights." I pulled out my phone and opened my property deed. Digital copy. County seal. It clearly stated, "No HOA attached. No shared authority." I handed it to the officer. He read it carefully, then looked at her. "This property is not under your association." Murmurs grew louder. One of the neighbors stepped forward. "Wait, if his house isn't in the HOA, then what about ours?" Linda snapped at him. "Stay out of this." Wrong move. The bride's father walked up to me. "Sir, we paid $10,000 to the HOA to rent this location." $10,000. I looked at Linda slowly. "You charged them?" "It was a community fee," she yelled, "for landscaping and preparation." I gestured around. "That landscaping is mine. Those flowers, not yours." "Ma'am, did you collect money for use of property you do not control?" She didn't answer. That silence was louder than the engine. Then one of the guests shouted, "She charged us too for parking passes." Another voice, "We pay monthly dues for lake access. He owns the lakeside." Linda's face went pale. The officer spoke into his radio. "I'm going to need a supervisor here." Linda pointed at me desperately. "He's the one trying to destroy everything. Arrest him before he damages evidence." "Evidence?" I stared at her. "Evidence of what?" She realized what she said, too late. The officer narrowed his eyes. "What evidence, ma'am?" She backed up a step. I mean property damage. But I had already opened something else on my phone. Security footage. Clear video from last night. Linda and 2 workers unlocking my gate, installing that lockbox, walking through my yard, measuring space for chairs. Time-stamped. The officer watched silently. Guests leaned in. The bride covered her mouth. "You broke into my property," I said quietly, on camera. Linda shook her head fast. "That's edited. Fake." The foreman suddenly spoke up. "Officer, we were hired to demolish because the owner reported repeated trespassing and tampering." The officer looked at me. "You filed that report?" "2 weeks ago," I said, after someone kept placing HOA violation notices on my door. Linda's breathing got heavy. The supervisor car pulled up, and that's when the biggest twist hit her. The supervisor stepped out, looked straight at me, and said, "Mr. Carter, good to see you again." Linda froze. She looked at me. "You know him?" I didn't smile this time. "He approved my demolition permit personally." "Ma'am, we've received multiple complaints about your HOA collecting unauthorized fees." Her lips parted slowly. "That's not true." The bride's father stepped forward holding a printed receipt. "It says payable to Linda Harbor, not the HOA." Dead silence. I looked at her and said the one line she never expected to hear. "You didn't just plan a wedding on the wrong land. You built your scam on the wrong man." Linda's hands started shaking. "This is a misunderstanding," she whispered, but nobody was listening anymore. The supervisor took the receipt from the bride's father. He looked at the name, then at her. "Personal account?" She tried to speak. Nothing came out. One of the officers walked toward her slowly. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to step aside." Guests pulled out their phones. Cameras everywhere now. The same neighbors who once nodded at her orders were staring like they were seeing her for the first time. "You can't do this to me," she snapped at me. "You set this up." I shook my head. "No, you did. I just didn't stop you." The demolition engine was still running, low and steady, like it was waiting for the final word. The supervisor turned to me. "Mr. Carter, do you still want to proceed with demolition?" I looked at the half-decorated porch, the torn grass, the strangers standing on my driveway. Then I looked at my phone, at a photo of my daughter's new house design saved on the screen. "Yes," I said calmly, "but give them 10 minutes to clear out." The bride began crying, not because of me, because of Linda. "You told us this was legal," she said. "You said you owned it." Linda didn't answer. An officer gently took her wrists. "Ma'am, you're being detained for trespassing, fraud, and filing a false report." And then came the final crack in her voice. "You don't understand. This neighborhood needs control." The supervisor replied coldly, "Not like this." As they walked her to the patrol car, one neighbor shouted, "What about all the dues we paid?" Another yelled, "You fined me for my flag being too big." She didn't look back. The door shut. It sounded final. The supervisor turned to the crowd. "Anyone who made payments directly to her should file a report. This HOA is under investigation, effective immediately." Just like that, the power she acted with for years disappeared in seconds. People began helping the wedding guests pack up chairs. Some apologized to me quietly. The bride's father walked over one last time. "I'm sorry," he said. "We trusted the wrong person. So did everyone else." 10 minutes later, the yard was clear. I raised my hand toward the foreman. The claw came down. Wood cracked. The porch collapsed in one clean hit. Dust filled the air. Not chaos, just closure. I stood there watching the old house come down piece by piece. A neighbor walked up slowly. "Why didn't you stop it earlier? You knew." I looked at him and said the one line that would spread through the whole street by nightfall. "Sometimes you don't stop corruption. You let it expose itself. By sunset, the house was half gone. The fake wedding was a story already spreading online. The HOA office lights were off. County officials were inside auditing files. And me? I wasn't angry. I wasn't celebrating. I was just standing on my land, finally quiet again. I didn't serve this country to ask permission to stand in my own yard. And the next house I build here, no one will ever mistake who owns it.